2001. I was out of high school. We partied all the time at Spring Lake, and Joseph Hibbard came down visiting from college. Let's see, what was it, like black tar opium or something like that crap. Well, him, Corey Davis, and Matt Taylor, who's now passed away, were all in my apartment. Not my apartment, Shane Caldwell's apartment at Spring Lake. And Bevis was putting out be kind, be friendly, neighbor things on people's doors and smelled marijuana. Now, as soon as Joseph saw the cops, he left his paraphernalia, jetted out of there, and I had not heard from him since. Not even a forgiveness, I'm sorry, nothing for 20 years. Did not hear a single word from him until he needed my help to get the job he has today. And I was holding a little bit of that stuff for Corey Davis in my room, and that's the only things besides a little bit of paraphernalia that I almost got in trouble for. But that's when my mom actually still cared and paid $2,000 for Mark Mobley to represent me, and Bevis had obviously been doing these things without cause or without the proper procedure, and I didn't even have to do anything. And more recently, he tells me a story about how he goes over to Nikki's house, which would be Destiny's aunt, and he says something about someone having a bad reaction to something. Well, later on, she tells me the rest of the story about how he left all his whatever he had there and just got paranoid and bugged out, and then came back the next day as if nothing had even happened. And so this is the pattern. I'm just curious of how many other people he might have done this to in that 20-year period. But and he hasn't had me, do any sort of work for him since August of 2024, and it took 3 months to get paid for that alone. And that was probably because Carrie came to me whenever she was having problems with Joseph. That's whenever he started using his new helper, new free labor. But that's what kind of person he is. He will throw anybody under the bus. He does not give a crap. He only cares about his own narcissistic ego. And I'm just sick and tired of these type of people getting ahead in life, while lying to the, everybody else about how they truly are. They never help anybody, in their free time. He doesn't care about his children except when it comes to sports, because, that's when he thought were his best times of his life, because he's a gambler, an alcoholic, and he can't control his own self. He has no willpower, no attention span. But he did get harassed by the drunk master electrician that used to live next to me, who also got kicked out of Woodridge for his running his mouth, when he was drunk. But 2 years after the fact, after I tell him, if you can prove that you have all these bills and can't pay whatever, then prove it to me. And instead, he comes up to me and shows me that guy is in jail. And he's in jail for DWI, felony possession, and whatever. But I could give a flying rat's tail if he's in jail or not. That matters nothing to me. What does matter is that I've not had but 2 friends in my entire life since kindergarten. and both of them are doing their own things, and they're very successful. But since then, I have devoted my life to helping the family businesses and trusted so many individuals who have every single one of them. When it came down to it and it was time to pay the bill, they turned, turned. They just weren't my friends, weren't people that I even want anything to do with. Not a single one. Because they're all the people that my dad chose to work for him, that I met through helping him achieve his dream of owning his own business. And the fact that, my family's used the detention center as punishment for, whenever I was, after my first breakup, the first girlfriend I had after my divorce, that's what my mother used to punish me whenever I was drinking instead of talking to me or trying to help me through a hard time. But when my sister was having her hardest time after taking all these pain meds throughout her second pregnancy, and then me and her have a little wrestling match, and I end up doing 11 days down there. The funny thing is, I've been assaulted by my brother-in-law on a family trip, and every time I tried to bring it up on the way back, my mom would say, just shut up. I don't want to hear another word about it. As if it happened to her, as any of it happened to her. What happened was, I got up, and my sister was talking down to my daughter, calling her lazy, and I got in her face, and she yelled for her husband. Her husband, 250, 300 pounds. He just comes running in, hands stretched out, right for my throat. I mean, what kind of decent person does that? Why would they not just, step in between us if there was any problem? Because she didn't get a hand put on her, but I wrestled a 300-pound, guy off, plus my dad, and it took them 20 minutes to get me out the door, and I slept out on the goddamn porch on that vacation. And that's a fact. So, and Kristen could have stopped it at any time, but she didn't. And even prior to that, I listened to her gripe and complain about her husband whenever we went to take the kids to an arcade, and she was on her period during that vacation. That's why she didn't want to swim out in the ocean. So her, she's just always had some reason to cause me and even my aunt's life hell for no reason. She's been in 2 relationships, yet she tried to give me, advice about, sometimes you don't get closure. Bullshit. If Kevin disappeared and didn't say a word, she would want to know why, and it would drive her nuts. So I don't take advice from people who have no experience in certain, things, like Dad trying to give me advice about my daughter's ex-boyfriend's truck. And he was wrong about that too. And he also tried to give me advice about going in front of a judge when he has never been in front of a judge, but he most certainly needs to be, because he physically harassed me. And that's the first time was when I first got to my mom and dad's house. The second time was right before, let's see, July, I believe. But anyways, he busted open my door, pushed me around, I guess to make himself feel like a bigger man, because this is why I have no respect for my parents whatsoever. And then when I'm running outside trying to get away from him, out on the other side of my truck, I fall down on my knees and hyperventilate for 30 seconds to a minute, but it felt like an eternity. Not being able to catch your breath is a little scary. And it's even worse when it's your own family, telling you the truth isn't attainable. Bullshit. That's what I say. The truth is very much attainable, but they're hiding it because all these little details that I've picked up, you know, it's they. My dad used to take groceries to Shane McCoy. He's a compulsive liar, flat out. He used to go get pizzas at the other Pirates Cove restaurant, and um, that's where Letitia Holland worked, the one who stole $2,600 from Subway, the other felon, and that's who these people that are my parents, biologically, but that's who they always back up. My dad and mom has even witnessed my aunt, you know, uh, right after she got physically assaulted by somebody, and dad, all he had to say was, "Looks like somebody had a scuffle," and mom didn't even stand up for her sister then. After the abuse they had went through, and she didn't stand up for her, and Granny never stood up for her one dang time throughout her life, and they just blamed her. But I'll tell Granny this: did Amy choose to have an alcoholic, abusive father? No, you chose that. It's not like I would change it, but you chose your husband. You chose to tune out your daughter. You chose to tune out your first grandson as well and not listen to him. You chose to listen to Kyle Lynch. You chose to listen to, Judy or Tish. You chose to listen to everybody but the person telling you the fucking truth. That is the problem with my fucking family. Granny, Kristen, Mom, or Cindy, Chris, Loper, those are the people that are the problem. Period. They're emotionally abusive. They start rumors. They spread rumors. Mom is the one who's always had the temper, and I've been able to keep my temper under control while she just sits up in her house up atop a hill and pops her, marijuana gummies, if so Granny knows, and drinks just as much or more than Amy ever has in her life, ever. She's just better at hiding it. That's all there's to it. And I've even told Granny, go up there around 5, 6, 7 o'clock in the evening and see how fucking high she is. Not no specific words, but this is what, if when a family flat out just does not, support someone, kind of like, when I was 16 and I found out I had this anger, similar to what my mom has, my aunt and my daughter pretty much has. It's she has spent zero time trying to help me to get to the bottom of this, and it was actually my daughter that made me realize what it was due to all the myths, surrounding it. Now, I can draw a pretty good parallel between, how Taylor gave up on her son and sent him to live with his dad. And there's a documentary called To Die For that talks about how food dyes, synthetic food dyes, can cause some children to just throw tantrums and be too handsy and all these other things. And they should really watch that because she didn't ever take any time to try and help her son figure out what's going on with him. She just didn't care, and then she probably shipped him off to be with his dad because she couldn't handle him. And my mom, she did basically the same thing with me, except she just didn't put any effort into helping me figure out anything whatsoever. But all the while, throughout my sister's life, she's shown her support through, basically still up to now. So she knows how to show somebody support, emotional support, but it's only the one because they both take part in talking crap about every other family member, Granny included, Matthew included, Julie included. They talk about every other family negatively. And that's what I despise the most. And I know because I've lived with them, And I have every right to be as pissed that I am, and I'm tired of having to, you know, ask and ask and ask for the truth and them do nothing but hide it. I asked for a lawyer in November of 2023, and I asked for my phone records in that same time period, but it took 5 months for them to get me my own cell phone records. All the while, mom tries to say, I try to let her know that there's two devices on the Starlink network that she needed to take off there that were private and unknown. And she would not remove them for nothing. But now that I'm not there, she's got that network open. So anyone within a nearly 80-yard radius of her house can connect to her Starlink network for free and use her internet. And that is a major security risk, along with she also leaves the front door open or unlocked every night. And this is how, those people could have easily slid my password books back into the house because they stole them right as I was moving out of those apartments. It's if they were even remotely aware or had listened at any point or even checked any of the evidence, which they haven't. And one time Dad checked about complaints, but I never asked him to check that. He can't listen to anybody. It's like nails on a chalkboard for him to listen to anybody else speak. But every morning, that's all he does is he loves hearing himself talk, And I really don't know what version of Christianity they're studying because they're not Christians anymore. They don't care about anybody but themselves. They don't care about their community. I've tried to get them to put in a free air, thing, and I told them I'd do all the work. But they didn't even want to do that. But they'll, fix their fence over there by the garbage can. So, anything, any bad karma or business, going slow, that's on them. Because the only people that they have to blame is themselves. They blame me and my aunt for the same problems that they have. Like my sister's still taking opiates to this very freaking day, getting testosterone implants just because she wanted an energy boost or whatever. But did she look up the side effects? No. Did she look up the side effects to supplementing herself with iodine and taking non-ionized salt? No, because iodine poisoning was exactly the symptoms she had, and that's what nuked her own thyroid. So she's caused all her own health problems. Yet she gets all the support, and the smart one who does all the research and who is polite, honest, loyal, worked for the family for 27 years, gets nothing. They just think it's all about money. That's all Granny's worried about. That's all Mom's worried about. But it's not. It's about showing support. Do you think anybody would take advantage of my sister or my mother? No, that's because they're scared of them. Anybody who knows them would not take advantage of them because of my mom's temper. But when it comes to me, she and Dad have proven, even with the first call I ever made to the police, that they could care less about anybody else's happiness but their own. And they think they're going to be on some higher level, whenever the apocalypse finally does come, or the end of days, which is really just the end of their life. They just can't realize that or can't see past their own face, But, it's just, there's no getting to these people whatsoever that are supposedly my family and related to me. But I'm nothing fucking like them. But I'm fed up with people using me and taking advantage of me and undervaluing me because I've been paid barely over minimum wage for 27 years working for my mom and my dad. At any other company, shoot, I'd have benefits, I'd have authority, I'd move on up the ladder, but since my mom couldn't take the time to help me figure out why I had the problems I had with attention and depression, the major depression is a sign of ADHD, and the emotional dysregulation that's, you know, that's another symptom of ADHD. But and it's 80% genetic, so it likely came from G Bob. But at least G Bob stood up for his family. That's one good thing. Maybe not in the end. He may have been an asshole, but my mom's an asshole right the fuck now, and she has been an emotional terrorist for I don't know how long, at least 5 or 6 years or more. Because on the way back from that trip, when she kept telling me to shut up, my daughter had to. She saw the whole incident. She witnessed, how upset I was the entire way back, and she wouldn't even listen. Would not even let me talk about it. That is the problem. And I can't. I've tried every form of media. I've tried talking to them. I've tried printing out all this research. I've tried every way possible. There is like literally no other way to get to these people than to out them publicly and make sure everyone knows exactly how shitty a people they truly are. Guarantee you.